Okay, hi, my name is Alyssa Liu. I do a lot of like pole tutorials and pole things on Instagram and YouTube. And I decided it's finally time for me to share my story. I'm really nervous about it, and I've had a lot of difficulty trying to find like the words and the way to like properly like share what I want to say. But I just got back from Miami and somebody told me I just need to start recording myself saying what I have to say and just listening back to it, and the rest would fall into place. So here I am just recording it, and I'm just gonna tell my story mostly for myself, but maybe in time I'll want to share it with all of you as well. So I was like holding off on recording everything because I wanted to wait till my suitcase was found so I could like have my proper setup and everything, but my suitcase isn't getting found, and I feel like it's just a way to stop me from like actually doing this. So I'm just going for it, and I'm just gonna share and let the pieces fall where they fall. So let's just jump into it. So okay, one of the big questions I get asked is, what is my ethnicity? I am half Chinese and French, German, Swedish, and Polish. I like to say like Euro-Asian because I think that sounds so much more exotic. But yeah, I'm like American Asian, half white, half Chinese. And the reason I'm starting there is to kind of start with my parents and my history background. So if you are a mixed child, if you come from a minority, if you're raised internationally and not the typical white girl, you might be able to relate a little. So my dad is from China. He was there till he was 26 or 27, which interestingly enough is how old I am now. Or that was when he met my mom, something like that. But he was born and raised in China. My grandmother comes from a fairly wealthy family. My grandfather grew up on a farm. And yeah, they raised him very Chinese-ly. So in turn, I was raised very Chinese-ly in an American world. My mom grew up traveling. Her dad worked for General Motors. So she was born in Michigan, Detroit, Michigan, and then she went on to go to live in Germany, South Africa, and I think she went to college in New York and then lived in Michigan again, and then eventually went to China to be a teacher. As a missionary, a Christian missionary, and she wanted to live there. Thus, my parents met. So my mom was an English teacher for adults, and one of her students was my dad's best friend. And my dad, who is a very smart, somewhat obsessive man, had already taught himself English on his own. He's taught me his techniques and his ways. He's very, very smart. And so he already was, you know, speaking the language and ready to court the ladies by the time my mom came. And so that he did. And at this point, my mom is like 30. She's thinking she's gonna be a nun. And yeah, she just doesn't think love is in the cards for her. But, you know, then here comes my dad. Just sweeping her off her feet like what every woman wants, and he just totally courts her, and they fall in love, and my mom is like, what's happening? And then next thing you know, bam, my dad flies out to America for the first time ever, marries my mom that week, super jet lagged, doesn't even know what's happening. They fly out to California, they get an apartment, they do the dirty, and I'm conceived. And so I come into this world totally unexpectedly, not what my parents were ready for at all. But I mean, what did they expect to happen? And so here I enter this little Asian American baby with my parents trying to sort life out. And yeah, Okay, I'm gonna start getting more into my childhood. Mom, Dad, if you're listening to this, I hope you're not, because I just have to share my story from my perspective, and it has a good ending, is all I'm gonna say. But I also really want to be real about like what I experienced, and yeah. So okay. So I'm a performer. I'm a circus burlesque performer in this current day and age. I do like a lot of social media work. I do a lot of shows. I'm on stage a lot. And people always say you can always tell if your kids are meant to be performers. And at the end of the day, that was very true. Or at the beginning of the day, that was very true. I was definitely like a very expressive child. I was always like dressing up and I just absorbed everything and just was such a performer. And so like if I watched a movie, I would like become the character. I was just a very big personality, and always like directing shows and everything. And when my brother came, I would like direct him into like little shows and productions, and I was just always like made for the stage. I just loved the lights and the cameras and the action and the fantasy of it all. And ooh, little brain blockage there. We're diving into some repressed memories. All right, I'm going to take a break for a second from my story to say like the reason I'm sharing is because I have been through like a lot of trauma, a lot more than the average person. I've also been through a lot of unreal experiences, like a lot of things that people only like dream of ever experiencing. I've had the privilege to experience in this lifetime, and because of that, it's given me just a very like well-rounded perception of life. And so I want to share it because now with what I've been through, I see so many people living in this like little box, and I see them kind of like just going through the motions and like continuing generational cycles of unhealthiness. And the only way to like break out of that is by opening your mind to realizing there's more and rewiring your brain. So this whole thing is like kind of my process of how I rewired my brain and taught myself to see healthier and to accomplish healthier. I had to teach myself what love was. I had to teach myself what healthiness was. I had to teach myself how to like not fall into depression or anxiety. And it's hard to do when you don't have a blueprint in front of you to give you that example. But I read a lot of books, which really, really helped me. And things like, you know, books like Eat, Pray, Love, podcasts like The Mindset Mentor, things like that helps me realize there's something bigger and better beyond what I've experienced. And I just have to like train my brain into this elevated state of mind, even though I've never seen it and no one's guiding me through it, and I've only been in this toxic, unhealthy environment. So that's why I'm creating this and why I'm sharing all of this, because I believe it can help other people. And I believe because I've experienced so many really unusual things that most people don't ever experience in their lifetimes. Most 26-year-olds don't experience it, but most people in general just don't experience a lot of the things I've been through. I feel like it's just time for me to start sharing. So getting back into it. Okay, so yeah, my childhood. So I have a lot of repressed memories, but basically because of my Asian background, I was taught, like a lot of Asian children's, this is nothing that I fault my dad to. This is just what Asians are taught is the way of life. So I was raised very academically. I was told like my love and self-worth came from being an academic success. And even then, even if I was successful, it still wasn't enough. I always had to do better. And so I was constantly like chasing this better, so I could like gain love. But in reality, it just created a lot of anxiety and depression. So this whole like performer inside of me, this like larger than life child that like was like dressing up and like creating productions and everything, that kind of got buried away. Like it was still there, and I still, you know, I was lucky my parents, put me through gymnastics and like let me do dance and dance classes and stuff. But a lot of that was like really repressed, and this like really expressive like person inside of me was just like really pushed down in this plight to accomplish academic success. And the reason of that being, God, my family's gonna hate me for sharing this. All right, I'm just gonna share it, and if I have to edit it out later, I'll edit it out. But this version is at least for me, so I'm just gonna like dive into it and just like be honest. When I hit 6th grade, I was getting ready for church. I grew up Protestant Christian. My mom raised me in that religion. She was a missionary and everything. My dad had accepted Christ before they got married, and then that kind of went away. And then all of a sudden, this is my childhood perception of what happened. President Bush came into office, and something happened where there was this war in Iran that was somehow all the Christians stood behind Bush on it, but somehow it was actually like a war for oil. Then there was the 9/11 thing and all of this blah, 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 blah. I don't know. Like, I have my thoughts on it now. It really doesn't matter, but all I know is that as a kid, somehow, because President Bush was in office and all of these Christian people stood behind him, I was banned from going to church. Basically, I was told that I was getting brainwashed, so I was not allowed to go. But I wasn't told that, like, nicely. I was, like, screamed at. My dad's a very passionate man, which I am thankful for because I'm a very passionate person, and he's very all or nothing and an extremist, which makes up who I am, being a very passionate extremist person that gets shit done, but also it's a very intense, like, childhood to grow up with. So all I remember in 6th grade was one time coming down, just totally like decked out in my pink and glitter, ready to go lead the worship team in our little hand motion dancing, and just being told I wasn't gonna go to church. And my heart just sinking because my whole identity had been built around this religion, and God and being a good Christian daughter. And so now I was being told I wasn't allowed to go. So basically what happened over the next few years of my middle school time was a bunch of fights just started breaking out. My dad would just like yell at my mom for hours. Watermelon would be thrown on the floor. People would just be upset. And there's just like a lot of like screaming and crying. And so I started reading, I just started like diving into my Bible. I started like reading a bunch of like Voice of the Martyrs magazine about like missionaries who were like dying for their religion, which looking back at it now, unhealthy. To be a child at the age of, how old was I? A 12, and reading about like people being skinned alive for their religion and thinking like this is the way is like really fucking intense. And yeah, like I really clung on to this. Like if these people can like be burned alive for their religion, I can be locked in my room, and my duty is to be a good Asian Christian daughter. My duty is to like serve my family. This is like what is required of me to be a good person and to save people. And I have to save my dad. I have to save my family, which is like a really fucking huge burden for an 11, 12, whatever year old. So I took it upon myself to like have little like worship sessions and Bible studies with my brother in my dad's study room. And yeah, fun stuff. So then, like, it got more intense. The recession happened. My dad went into day trading, and there was a huge crash. Lost a ton of money. And again, these are only the things I understood in bits and pieces as a child. But after that recession happened, my dad went into a mad depression. And so all I remember after that is for 6 years, My dad retreated into his office, which was right next to my room. My mom had to get a job, and I'll never forget the day she got her job. She got this really great professor job at this great Christian university, and I just remember her coming home after getting the job and crying. And I just remember feeling helpless. And my mom had been in her 20s, this adventurous, like traveling the world, all these just incredible stories. And she was just so free. And then she had a family and she was stuck to this job. And so, yeah, like, yeah, I just remember being a child and feeling, you know, I was a big empath at the time. I say at the time because I really learned to disconnect with my emotions over time. But at the time, I was a huge empath, and I just felt the weight of my family on my shoulders. I felt my dad's depression and his anger. I felt my mom's sadness and hopelessness, and I felt my brother just chilling and just wanting to protect that sweet soul, but also knowing that as quiet as he was very intuitive and an empath and knew that he was feeling it too. So I just wanted my family to be happy. So I took it upon myself to, you know, comfort my mom as much as I could, to be as much wisdom and comfort as I could, because I felt my dad wasn't standing up in that department. And you know, my dad was depressed, but it was shrouded in so much anger that there wasn't much comforting to be done. So, you know, I remember when I was 8, he sat me down in front of the computer and said, like, this is where you need to go to school. And it was a bunch of, like, Ivy Leagues. So, like, I set my sights on Princeton. And I don't remember, like, if he told me or, like, if I came to this conclusion in my head. I'm not going to, like, start filling in gaps for what I can't remember. But I know at some point in my brain there was this switch over of, I need to save my family. I need to save my dad from hell. I need to save my mom from this job. The best way I can do that is by being a good submissive daughter and listening to everything they say. And, you know, I can essentially like become this like crazy, amazing academic girl. And just like, you know, be the prodigy child I'm supposed to be, and somehow me fulfilling my duties will save my dad. I'll be able to like work and save my mom. Like I can just save them all, you know. So I just like, I dived into my studies. I was like, every day I'd carry like 6 textbooks in and out of school. I'd go to school during the day, I'd go to college at night, and then I'd study till I go to sleep. And that was the entirety of my life. I was in like every single club there was to be in. I had like a position in every club. I was like the president of the dance team, secretary of Christian club, secretary of ASB, all this different stuff. And when it came to awards assemblies, I just like would have a ton of awards. I remember one award, I didn't get that many, and I was like devastated. I got like maybe like, I don't know, 4 instead of 8. And I was like, this isn't good enough. So yeah, it was really intense. I just felt that I had to be this academic star. And I correlated it to saving my family. And it was a lot. And so, that was like one aspect of my childhood. There was like the second aspect of it where trying to decide which part I want to dive into next. There were 2 more aspects of my childhood that were really intense. There was a spiritual side, and then there was also like the abuse side. So I guess I'll go into like, ooh, I'm shaking a little. I guess I'll go into the spiritual side. Next. So, okay, I'm not Christian anymore. I've been actually very, very agnostic. I'd say I'm still pretty agnostic. Okay, sorry, my GoPro got too hot. It's probably gonna die again at some point. But it paused at the perfect point because I just kind of finished off talking about my academic expectations as a child. So going on, I was saying there's kind of two more dynamics to my childhood that made it more complicated. Actually, maybe three. So let's just dive into one of them. So there's also like, God, I don't want to sound crazy. Okay, let's just talk about it. I can always edit out, right? Oh my God, my parents are gonna hate me. Okay, so then there was also like the component, there's also like the spiritual side of stuff. My mom was super Christian. My dad was super atheist until he became super Buddhist all of a sudden. And that changed everything. So I was super Christian. I had a point where I was like Pentecostal Christian and I was just in it. Like I was just deep in it. I think it was kind of this coping mechanism for me of like, I just dove into religion as a way of giving meaning to what was happening in my life. Okay, let me actually start by explaining first, so that way the spiritual aspect makes more sense. So there's also like this psychological abuse going on. So like a lot of people know about like physical abuse. It's when you're getting hit. Sexual abuse is when, you know, well, we know what that is. So those are types of abuse. There's also psychological, verbal, and emotional abuse. These are becoming more known, but they're a little bit less known and they're harder to identify because it's easy to just think like, oh, like this is normal, or oh, like there's nothing. Sometimes it's not what someone says, it's how they say it. That can really cause a huge difference, but because of what they're saying, there's nothing wrong with it. You can't like pinpoint them on it, and then you just accept it as normal when it's not, and it's not okay, and like the context in which it's being said or how it's being said is actually very abusive. So this took me like a while to identify, and I even to this day, sometimes I mean now I can identify it a lot better, but usually if something is not sitting right with you and somebody says or does something that doesn't feel good, there's generally something wrong with it. If it makes you feel very not good, there's probably something wrong with it, and don't brush it off as like, oh, well, this is normal, because it's not how people should treat each other. So for me, mine was a little bit more like, this probably isn't normal, but again, I'm locked in my room studying all day. How am I supposed to know? A big thing that started happening, and this is very common in Chinese culture, because I wanted to go to church, I was starting to get threatened a lot. My dad at the time was very anxious, very full of fear. He was in his room 24/7 just researching things, and he just got sucked into this conspiracy theory thing. So my childhood suddenly became this really, really intense boot camp. It was like, you know, I was studying nonstop, and then like every Sunday we would cook dinner for the week, and it was like this really fucking intense process where like, you know, we had to like prepare the food, we had to cook the food, we had to make a fucking feast, we had to wash the dishes after. But while we were doing it, we were getting yelled at, and it was like life or death. Like this had to happen now or the world would explode. And it was really fucking intense. And it was at the point like one of the worst things you could do as a kid in my household was drop a fucking fork. If you dropped a fork on accident, it was game over. My dad would get so fucking pissed, and he would just stare at you and just like give you the death eyes and look down on you like you were the scum of the earth, and you would just have to sit there and take it and just stand there and like just take the heat. And I'm saying it really funny, but it was really fucking shitty. And it was so intense, and it was like this big family process, and it was just like, it was a lot. So like I was kind of lucky being the eldest, and like because I was so like, I'm going to Princeton, I'm studying nonstop, sometimes I didn't have to partake in the process, but it was also because I was scared shitless of like this like 5-hour intense process of like cooking. And then it got more intense because my dad was diving so deep into conspiracy theories. Like when we would eat dinner, it'd be like a 1-2 hour lecture about everybody that was trying to kill us. Like, I'm not gonna dive into that because, yeah, that's just too much. But basically, we were living in this boot camp conspiracy theory training center of everyone's gonna kill us. We gotta get ready. We gotta get ready for the end of the fucking world. And I think part of the reason why I'm sharing this now is because it's right after the pandemic and the COVID-19 thing. And when that shit happened, my whole family was like, we're good. We've been preparing for this our whole fucking lives. And it was like nowhere near as bad as what we prepared for. At least not yet, but yeah, like we were fucking ready. Like I literally as a kid, I was just waiting for the day to like be in school and like the FBI come in and be like, oh, salute, like your dad's been arrested, and be like, oh shit, it's happening, you know? But yeah, we just had basically a bunker going on, and like at one point we were eating out of our garden and we weren't allowed to eat like any other food. And at one point, like our windows were duct taped and we had to eat like a pot of seaweed because of this conspiracy theory or that conspiracy theory. I'm not even gonna go into that. My dad would really kill me if he knew I was sharing about this, but basically it was really fucking intense. Just all around, it was just intense. And so, yeah, that was like a lot, but like what started getting bad is like I really wanted to go to church. And to be totally honest, like my memory on this is becoming so fuzzy. I repressed a lot. And now that I can face it, I've also like wiped out a lot because me and my family aren't in this place anymore. And I've told them many times, we've made amends and we're moving on. And so I don't even go back and like try to remember all of this because it only causes me pain. And as far as I'm concerned, my parents are not who they used to be. So there's been this like snap in my memory of those people were like a lot to handle. These people are great. So I don't dwell. But at some point, I just remember, because I was the eldest and I was the first daughter and the only daughter, the expectations on my shoulders were really intense. My dad was always afraid that I was gonna get pregnant. So I wasn't allowed to have boyfriends, even though I had boys who like wanted to marry me, and I was just like naturally a lover. So somehow, because I wanted to love boys and because I wanted to dance, because I had these other things in me beyond just wanting to study and go to Princeton, because I wanted to go to church, I was screamed at a lot. I screamed at a lot. It was scary. It was not fun. My dad would stand in the doorway so I couldn't go. And I would just be berated on for hours. And I was threatened. And at first it was like, you're not allowed to read novels because you have to read textbooks. You're not allowed to dance because you have to study. You're not allowed to have a boyfriend, so just stay here. You're not allowed to go to church because they're gonna brainwash you. Something like that. But because I wanted to, and there was a lot of contradictory things, like if I asked why, I'd be like berated. I hope I'm using that word correctly, but eventually the threats just got more intense, and it was like, you know, I asked to go to church camp. Next thing I know, I'm getting screamed at for 3 hours and being told I'm never gonna be allowed to see my mom or my brother again. I'm gonna get kicked out. I'm gonna get disowned. I'm not a good daughter. I don't love God. I don't love my family. And I honestly, like, I can't even remember anymore. All I know is I was screamed at a fuck ton, and it was terrifying, and it was heartbreaking. And I remember one day, there was always like these false promises happening of once you graduate, you'll be free to do what you want. Once you get into college, you'll be free to do what you want. Once you work a job, you're free to... all these like false promises and false hopes. And I was okay, so picking up again, sorry about that. It's funny, I was watching back some of the content and I really I play with my hair a lot, probably because I'm nervous talking about all this. Okay, so anyways, yeah, the threats were real and it was a lot, and I just got to a point of being like, okay, I I just remember crying and being like, all right, you have to stuff down everything you feel and put it into this little cage and just let the cage fall into a pit of nothingness. And just all those, everything else you want to do, everything else you feel, just shove it away because you need to be a good, loyal daughter. And I just remember thinking, like, is this my life? Like, am I just going to be this, like, servant daughter for the rest of my life? At the time, it was looking like, yeah. So it was really a struggle. It wasn't until I hit a point where, what was the point? Oh my God. It's a lot to go through again. Oh yeah, but it wasn't until like I was in college and I was still getting yelled at, and then I just remember at one point, for whatever reason, I just like wasn't allowed to take showers anymore. My dad was threatening to take showers away. He was telling me like, because he needed to take them first, or because, I left the thing dripping a little or whatever, I just wasn't allowed to take showers anymore. Or our showers were being threatened. And up till this point, I felt like everything I loved was being taken away. Like I couldn't read novels, I couldn't dance, I couldn't this and that. And, everything I loved more was being taken away. I couldn't go to church, I couldn't have boyfriends, I couldn't see my friends. And then everything I loved more was being taken away. I couldn't see my mom and my dad or brother. I was going to be disowned, I was going to be kicked out. And then like we finally hit this point where it's like, now I can't take showers. And up till now I was like, well, maybe this is just how life is. I didn't know what happiness was until I was 23. I assumed love was like a cage. It was like, just this way to trap somebody. It was very overbearing and a terrible thing. And it wasn't until what I believed to be a basic necessity was being threatened to be taken away from me that I felt, okay, this is probably like not normal, not okay. Like if I'm not allowed to even take showers, now I'm getting a little nervous. Like, does that mean I'm not going to be allowed to eat? Like, we're starting to get down to basic human necessities. Like, I understand maybe extra stuff and like maybe the luxury of being able to read a book being taken away, maybe like the comfort of not seeing my family being taken away. But now, like, I can't shower. And that was the breaking point of, I think this is not okay. I think it's okay for me to be upset. I think it's okay for me to realize this is not even like really humane anymore. And that was like the breaking point for me of, I can't do this anymore. So yeah, that was the first time I decided to accept my situation is not okay and I don't like it. And I'm not gonna follow through with this. So I'm gonna end this first podcast episode, whatever, here. I'm gonna get a little bit more into like the spirituality of like what was going on in my household and just like the crazy experiences I had with that later, and then also talk about like what just the breaking point on when I decided to leave and what that looked like and how that continued to affect my life. But this was kind of the basis, this like psychological abuse of getting trapped into my own head and thinking like my job and duty was to serve. It's like a really foundational break of why I ended up doing and becoming who I am. And it's important to understand that if you're going through any kind of abuse, it's not okay. And so I'm going to tell you how I initially broke out. And then I'm going to tell you how it affected me and how like I had to continue breaking my way out of that cage that I had been built for me. Yeah, hopefully in me sharing about that, it'll help you, if you're going through abuse, to identify situations that are not okay, to identify toxic situations, and to give you the courage to get out if you need to. So, yeah, I'll be diving more into that next time. So stay tuned for that. All right, have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will be back shortly with another episode of The Religious Stripper.